We had some an intelligence report of some coordinates to look at. So I was over there orbiting around, and I had a technique that I sometimes used if I didn't see anything right away. I'd drop down a little bit. I didn't want to get too low to the ground because I sometimes threw out CBUs, cluster bomb unit, oranges I called them, to see if I got a reaction from any bad guys down there with them. And sure enough, I had orbited over these target coordinates, and one of the things that got their attention when a FAC flew over that didn't usually bother the bad guys, but they'd wait, and if you turned around and came back, then they got a little more worried, and if you circled, that's usually when they had decided that you had seen something. I started hearing gunfire. As soon as I heard the shots, I remember breaking away, diving a little bit to gain some airspeed, and then it quit. My backseater, Pathamith, said, Mr. Mike, you start engine again? I said, yeah, I'm sure trying to. I knew that it was completely tree-lined below me. There were no fields around at all, but I knew where one was, and it was to the east. So that's where I was trying to get to. Then it really hit something hard. I just remember it making what felt like a very long and split seconds, but a fall on in down to the ground. When it hit the ground, it fell over onto to the left side. The right wing was knocked off, or not knocked off, but it was broken in half, and I could hear the fuel running out of it. I heard the backseater scrambling and get out. Wiggled my way out of the window, crawled over to where the backseater was sitting on a log. And I said, okay, come on, we're going up the side of this mountain right here.
So one day, in all my flying around, I was working way up in the northwest corner of Laos, where China, Burma, and Thailand and Laos all come together. And it was the royal capital of Laos, and it was called Luang Prabang. And it was just a regular regional airport. It was a very quiet area. There was rarely any action up there. And it was just about the most routine day you could ever ask for. We finished our work, and we were coming back to Luang Prabang to go to the bar for a drink, as we always did every day after work. And as we approached the airport about 5 miles out, we began to hear a lot of radio chatter. And this was very unusual because by now, everybody should be at the bar. We were late. It was getting dusk. We were supposed to be on the ground by now. And as I got closer, I began to pick up some words from the radio chatter, and I realized that what was going on was there was a swarm of aircraft flying around the Luang Prabang airport, and they were all talking because they were trying to locate a pilot that had been shot down nearby.
As we made our way up this karst, we were, of course, we were intentionally staying away from any trails. We were just going straight up the side of the karst, or diagonally up it at least. And every once in a while, I'd grab a hold of something to pull myself up, and when I pulled it, kind of got a little twinge in my arm. And I wasn't sure, but I thought maybe it was broken. So now it's an hour later. The sun's starting to go down. Getting a little concerned, but I hear a plane. So I called out again on the radio. Any aircraft, this is Raven 11 on the ground. That's a strange call to make.
I could hear the downed pilot speaking on the radio. He had an emergency radio, and he was talking. But he was being garbled over by everybody else. There was about all these 10 aircraft. Everybody wanted to be the guy to rescue him. So everybody was trying to talk to him, and nobody was exercising any radio discipline. So it was really hard to hear him and really hard to talk to him.
I did not want to be out there all night and then to have to crank this thing back up in the morning.
On my first trip around the airport, when I was on the west side, between the airport and the river, I noticed that for a few seconds I could hear the guy very clearly. And then it got all garbled up again. And his handheld emergency radios don't travel very far, and they're not very strong. So I made another 180 as I circled around the airport. And when I got to the opposite side of the airport, there was another time when I could hear him even better. So radio, traveling line of sight, I just connected the two dots where I could hear it best in my mind. And I said, aha, 2 points make a straight line. I had heard the word canyon. There's a canyon to my right. So I just made a right turn.
Pretty soon I heard this chopper, and I came up on the radio. I said, "Hey, chopper in the area. You're very close. I can hear you."
I hadn't even finished my turn when we hear on the radio, "You're right overhead." So I stopped. You can do that in a helicopter.
When I saw him through the trees at a sort of a slant range distance, I had him turn a little bit.
And by this time, my crew chief says, this Ernie Cortez says, "Sir, I see him. He's right below us." So, okay. So I looked around. We're hovering over jungle that's has 200-foot trees, and over these gigantic teak trees. At the bottom, they're almost as big as gigantic redwood trees, but they're hardwood instead of redwood. So I don't want to crash here. This is no place to crash.
So sure enough, cable came down with a horse collar on it. I said, "Okay, haul him up." And so they started hauling him up, and it was a good 25 feet or more down through those tall trees. And as got halfway up, and I thought, oh, they might not recognize this guy. I said, "Now it's okay. This guy's an indigenous guy. You know, he's one of our little friendlies, but he's not a bad guy. He's okay." So they got him up and took that horse collar up and dropped it back down. And as soon as it hit the ground, I grabbed that thing and I put it on, and I said, "Take me away." And they started winching me up, and I said, "Now let's get out of here. Just drag me through this stuff," because I didn't care. And there were vines and everything, you know, they were dragging me through, but that was okay. I wanted to be moving. I wanted to get out of there.
I really estimated at the end we'd hovered there for probably 15 minutes. So then we flew back to Luang Prabang, which was like a 2-minute flight. It was not very far that this guy had crashed. And we landed, and as I'm cooling down the helicopter and shutting down, he just gets out of the helicopter and he just waves me like that, and he says, "Bye." And he walks away. And there's an ambulance waiting for them, and so they put him in the ambulance and they drive away.
It was sure a great feeling to be back on that base. I still am not quite sure exactly who I saw there by the helicopter, but I jumped out of the carryall there and shook somebody's hand and said thanks and jumped back in, and we raced off.
They're gone. It was the custom in those days that when you rescued someone, he was supposed to give you a bottle of booze. And I said, "Well, there goes my bottle of booze. That's okay, no big deal." And I never thought about it after that for a long time.
We dropped off the back seater at the local hospital, and this medic, I told him, you know, that my arm felt funny, and he had put a splint on it. He said, "I think I'm going to give you a shot of morphine." And I said, "I don't want any." I said, "What's that going to do?" And he said, "Well, it'll probably put you to sleep." And I said, "I don't want to be asleep." I said, "How about a beer?" And he said, "Okay, we can do that."